Welcome to Whatsoever More or Less. My name is Jason. I'm just a guy who's studied a lot of the words of the prophets and the founders and the Constitution itself and the other founding documents. So today I have on my mind, after listening to Thomas S. Monson talk yesterday morning, I have 3 channels. I have my Constitution channel, and my Constitution channel is the one I'm on the most nowadays. It gives me Constitution-specific recommendations, but it also gives me General Conference talks a lot every morning. It's fantastic. What a way to start my day. And Thomas S. Monson's telling this story of this father who lends his son the family car to go on a date on Saturday night. And the son, he tells the son, make sure on your way back home, this father tells the son, make sure to gas the car up because tomorrow is Sunday and we don't want to buy gas on Sunday. We don't want to break the Sabbath. Well, the son had such a great time on his date, was so excited about it, that on his way home he completely forgot about what his father had told him or reminded him of. And so the next morning, his father got up, because he was in church leadership positions. He got up to go to his meetings, like so many busy guys do. And he goes in the car, starts it, and turns around, shuts off the car, brings the keys back inside, and just starts walking to church, because he was not going to buy gas on Sunday. He would not let expediency, this is the word that Thomas S. Monson used, he would not let expediency compromise the standards to which he had made covenants, which is similar to an oath. And then Thomas S. Monson tells us these children paid this tribute to their father in the funeral. They were the finest kids, and they were the children of H. Verlin Anderson, former BYU law professor, author of books like Many Are Called But Few Are Chosen, The Great and Abominable Church, The Book of Mormon and the Constitution, and several others. A man who would not let expediency compromise that to which he had made covenants or oaths. So, with that introduction in mind, and having a former prophet get up and pay such a fine tribute to this man who some might see as controversial because he's so strict to the whatsoever is more or less than the Constitution calls for or allows, and the need to not exercise unrighteous dominion, down to the following of the laws of nature and nature is God, even in our local governance. He's so strict with all that that would probably be controversial to some people, I think. But anyhow, H. Verlin Anderson, in his book, The Great and Abominable Church, there's some things I remember that he talked about. He talked about, for example, the education system, which forces us to accept things that are inconsistent with the laws of nature and nature's God, to answer tests, to get the tests passed on stuff that violates what God himself said. I'm thinking evolution, probably, the existence of God, the creation of the earth, and definitely law school training on the Constitution, which if you take a constitutional law class, you're basically spending more time studying Supreme Court precedent than the Constitution itself, not just by a little bit, but by a lot. And so anyhow, he referred to this as part of the Great and Abominable Church and called it state-enforced priestcraft. Or in other words, the system isn't optional. You have to have these certain general education requirements met. Parents have to put their kids through school. We have to pay for it. Our tax dollars have to pay for it. And then these teachers who teach these topics teach them to make a living. And so they're doing it for financial gain. And he calls it state-enforced priestcraft. I know this is me paraphrasing. I recommend getting the book The Great and Abominable Church. I definitely recommend all of H. Verlin Anderson's books. Probably that would be the equivalent of you asking, seeking, and finding. So you have to make the effort yourself. I've been through the book several times. It won't stick with you if you don't put the effort in at some point on your own. So I'm going to recommend you put in the effort. Now, H. Verlin Anderson did say in one of his general conference talks, towards the end, he refers to 3 Nephi 17, where the angels came and taught the children things that they didn't teach to the parents, and how 4th Nephi there was peace for so many years afterwards. And he says it's because the next generation came to understand things through the Spirit or through angels teaching them that the previous generation had failed to understand in their upbringing. And that's a really interesting statement. And the reason I'm bringing this up is I was just listening to William H. Watkins Jr Esq, so a lawyer, an attorney, who has written on restoring the Constitution. And towards the end of the interview, which was a fascinating interview, I highly recommend it. It wasn't from the National Constitution Center. It was from the another one of those channels. Anyhow, the interviewer says, so you don't have to be an attorney to understand the Constitution then, huh? And William H. Watkins Jr. says, it would actually be better if you aren't. Okay, this is the truth. Indoctrination dulls the senses. That seems to be an obvious thing. I sometimes wonder, as somebody who's a former metal musician, if my senses to what's too heavy and what isn't too heavy, sometimes in a crowd, may have been dulled. So my past fluencies, my past proficiencies that I worked hard at developing, may have dulled my senses. And I think that anybody who has had a profession or something they've worked very hard at outside of the inspiration of the Lord might need to also think the same way. God has said, and I want to make a comparison here, one final comparison. There were 3 efforts to get the plates in Jerusalem. Okay? The third one was the one that was taken by faith. And that was where the final effort was complete and perfect. There were 3 efforts to get the Union right in our founding after declaring independence. The Articles of Confederation, the framing at Philadelphia, and then finally the agreement to ratify the Constitution and immediately amend it afterwards, giving us the Bill of Rights, giving us the final rules of construction, the filter through which to put Articles 1 through 7 to make sure that we're getting it right. And Doctrine and Covenants says, whatsoever is more or less comes of evil, that God has established the Constitution. I think the same way, if we just look at the way the founders lived their lives and did everything, we're failing to properly interpret the Constitution. The only way to interpret the Constitution is as though when Joseph Smith said, he says, when I'm acting as a prophet, then the words I'm saying are the words of a prophet. But when I'm acting as a man, the words I say are when me acting as a man. I think you need to look at the Constitution as though the Spirit of the Lord, they didn't know for sure what was going to come out of it, but in the end, the Spirit of the Lord made it what God wanted it to be. And so you cannot look at all the actions of the founders as though they represent what God established. But you can look at the words of the Constitution. And you can't look at Supreme Court precedent. Oh, totally not. Please don't look at Supreme Court precedent. Barron v. Baltimore, for example, is a disaster. What a terrible early doctrine of the founding of the United States. And it was all by following the opinion of a Supreme Court justice. It was a bad opinion. And so I guess I'm saying it's best if you're not a lawyer, and if you are a lawyer, think about what President Oaks said in his talk defending our divinely inspired Constitution. His most important years for studying the Constitution were his 37 years as an apostle of Jesus Christ. Despite all the other stuff that he listed off on his resume, he called that the most important part. So turn to the understanding under which the founders ratified the Constitution, and turn to the scriptures and their expounding of what brought that about. Things that the founders might not have even recognized fully themselves, although they seem to have. And that's where the truth is. And it might just be easier for you if you're not a lawyer, so don't be intimidated to study it. You might be more qualified. All right, thanks you guys. Talk to you later.